Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the From Adversity to Abundance podcast. I am your host, Jamie Bateman, and I'm thrilled today to have with us Jim Britt. Jim is the founder of Cracking the Rich Code, among other businesses and offerings. Jim, how are you doing today?
Good, Jamie. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. Are you joining us from California? Is that where you are?
I am. I'm in Northern California between Sacramento and Lake Tahoe in the foothills.
Oh, nice. Sounds wonderful. I know California is huge, but I'd heard that the weather was a little cooler recently than you all are used to. Is that true?
Well, we went from winter to summer.
Got it.
We
Yeah.
didn't have a spring. So
Overnight.
we're like 87 today. So it's pretty nice.
Gotcha. So Jim, for our listener out there who's unfamiliar with you, tell us who you are today and what you're up to today.
Well, I've been a professional speaker for 44 years. I've also been coaching for about 40 years before the word coach was even used in business. And my speaking has taken me all over the world. I've presented over 5,000 events in about 30 countries. And, you know, what I focus on primarily today, even though I do a lot of different things, but it kind of brings me back to this, is something I discovered about 35 years ago, that we all have a core belief about ourselves that acts as an anchor that keeps us stuck. And now sometimes we have a core belief that moves us forward as well. But what I look at is the ones that keep us stuck. And the problem with it is people don't know that they have it. So what I do is help people to uncover that belief and how to take the emotional attachment off of it, so it becomes more like a file on your hard drive versus in your face every day.
That's interesting. I think we're going to unpack that a little bit more.
Yeah.
Now, before we jump back into your backstory, touch on kind of how you came to that conclusion. I mean, was this from your own entrepreneurial experience, or more working with other business owners, or how have you come to?
No, I tell you how
this?
I came. It was about 35 years ago, and I had just finished presenting a 2-day seminar for entrepreneurs. Had about 1,000 people in the class, and if I remember right, they spent about $1,500 to be there, plus their expenses. Some came in international and across country, so probably spent $2,500 to attend. And about a week later, I was kind of contemplating the event, reading some of the evaluations, just kind of hanging out by the pool, and suddenly the old 80-20 rule kind of popped in my head. You know, 20% of the people do 80% of the production, that type of thing.
Sure.
And I thought, why is that? How come people don't follow through with what they say they're going to do? You know, somebody goes and gets a real estate license and spends months studying, gets their license, finds a broker, gets a desk and a phone, and never do anything.
Sure.
And it was always kind of a mystery to me. And that day I really started thinking about it. And then suddenly it hit me. I thought, well, wait a minute. If that's really true, then I just had 1,000 people go through an event and 800 of them aren't going to follow through. And I thought, wow. I mean, it really hit me. I mean, it actually bothered me. And I thought, well, is it something I'm doing? And I thought, no, I just read through most of the evaluations. All of them were raving reviews. And I thought, well, we're all humans, but we're all different in some way. What makes us different? And I thought, well, it's the programming that we have. It's where it starts. I mean, our parents teach us to walk and talk and maybe say our ABCs and our numbers, and teach us how to swim so we won't drown, teach us to keep our hand out of fire and how to ride a bicycle and so on. And we develop our own habit patterns as we go. And some of them are so subtle that they become second nature to us. And we probably have hundreds of them that you don't even think about. You know, you get up in the morning and you put on a pair of pants. Which leg goes in first? Always the same one, I guarantee it.
Yeah.
And if you try the other way, it's uncomfortable. So, and you know, we have those habits, just like driving a car or walking or talking or any of those things. Once we learn it, we don't have to think that, okay, I've got these pants, now how do I get them on? Or I get my car, how do I drive this thing? So I
Sure.
thought, well, that's pretty cool. Those habit patterns must be stored right at the surface of your subconscious because you don't have to think about them to access them. Then I thought, next moment, I'm thinking, well, how about our past? That's what brought us where we are today. I'm thinking,
Sure.
well, if you believe in the law of cause and effect, we cause the effect that we're living based upon our actions we've taken.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, how do you remember that past? And I thought, well, you don't really remember all of it. You remember the beautiful things that happened, the highlights, maybe a vacation you took, or when you had your first date, or a child was born, or you had your first kiss, or you got your driver's license, those type of things we never forget.
Sure.
And I thought, well, that's pretty cool. Those must be stored right below those habit patterns where you could still access them pretty quickly.
Okay.
Then the next moment, though, changed everything for me. It's where the discovery took place. I thought, well, wait a minute. We don't just have beautiful experiences. We have negative experiences.
True.
And sometimes, some people go through some pretty traumatic things.
Absolutely.
I talked to somebody just a while back that they had to leave the country that they're in. Everything got taken from them. The whole family had to leave with nothing, and they were very wealthy.
Wow.
And they lived in a 1-bedroom apartment with 6 kids for like 2 years. And
Wow.
here in the U.S. And people go through stuff.
Sure.
Yeah. Some people get abused verbally, physically, sexually. It's all kinds of things that happen, but a lot of it's subtle too. We get programmed, and we develop these beliefs. Let's say, for instance, your parents were fighting. Maybe they do it a lot, and you, as a child, you hear your name brought up during the argument. Sure. Later, the parents get a divorce. Now the child blames themselves for the divorce.
Sure.
And they grow up in conflict in the relationship later on and don't know why, because they've got that anchor program.
Sure.
And the big thing is they don't know they have it.
Gotcha.
They know they have the problem. They know they're in their 5th abusive relationship, or they've struggled financially all their lives. They understand they have the problem. They're looking outside themselves for the solution. And the solution is inside. So I took it upon myself to develop, first to develop a way to help people discover what that core belief system is. And secondly, how to take the emotional attachment off of it so it becomes like one of those files on your hard drive. It's not in your face every day.
Interesting.
So that's how I discovered it. And I've been applying it for 35 years. And it's amazing work with people, because I've helped people lose weight. I've helped hundreds of women get out of abusive relationships, help people get back on track financially, because a lot of it's right up here. All of it's right up here, in fact.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask you, we can dive into it later, but I guess the avatar, the profile of the person you work with, your client, it sounds like it varies quite a bit, because these principles apply to almost all of us.
Everybody.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Well, let's put press pause on that, and we'll come back to that. Okay. No, I'm fascinated by it. I can't wait to get back to that subject. Let's jump back into your backstory again. And I know right before we hit record, we briefly touched on kind of, I think, a time period when you started your first business. And our listener is primarily an entrepreneur, or someone who may want to become an entrepreneur. They're definitely interested in an additional stream of income and making more money, and kind of growing as just being the best version of themselves. So I think your story and what you offer is going to they're both going to add a lot of value to our listener, for sure. Let's jump back into your backstory and talk about the adversity that you alluded to before we hit record.
Yeah. Well, I guess it started, my upbringing, we were raised in a very, very loving family, but very poor. And we barely had money to eat. And we had a roof over our head, but most of the time it leaked. We just lived in places where, wake up in the morning in the wintertime, the ice was on the inside of your window, not the outside.
Wow.
And
where'd you grow up?
I lived in the kind of the backwoods of Oklahoma for up until,
okay.
Well, we didn't have electricity until I was about 10. So, or indoor plumbing. So,
Wow.
and that's
Yeah.
pretty hard for some people to comprehend
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
we've had electricity a long time, but we didn't. So I was pretty amazed the first time we had an indoor bathroom. Uh,
It's wild, and I've never lived in those conditions, at least not for any extended period of time.
yeah.
We talk about poverty in the U.S. and I don't want to this can be a touchy subject for sure, but I think the poverty line is a little bit right below the poverty line might be a little bit different than what you grew up with or what people in a third world country might be dealing with. So in the US in general, we're pretty blessed.
Yeah.
But
I never
that's
knew I was poor. I mean,
sure.
we had fun. We just had fun as kids, and
Sure.
went wading in the creeks, and did kid stuff. So that
Yeah.
was actually, looking back on it, was a great experience.
Gotcha.
And my first job was at 6 years old, picking cotton. My
Yeah.
whole family picked cotton, and it was not an easy job. And we got paid 2 cents a pound, and cotton doesn't weigh very much. So to make a few bucks in a day was a hard
A
task,
lot of work.
especially for a child. I don't think I ever made it at 6 years old, ever made it more than $1 in a day. So that went on until I was about 12, and we did it in the seasons. And then I dropped out of high school in the 10th grade, about halfway through. Went to work in a gas station, pumping gas. Worked there for about 2 years. Got married at 18. Had my first child at 19. Got my dream job at 20, which was working in a factory on the assembly line, which I thought, that was my dream job. And found out within a few months that wasn't such a dream job after all. But I got invited to join up in a direct sales company. And, to get started in that company back then, you had to have inventory. So it cost me $4,000. A big problem was I had $9 in the bank. No way to get 4,000. Nobody I knew even had 4,000. And I went to 23 banks and loan companies before I finally found the number 23 that loaned it to me. And
wow.
So I went to work, and I didn't know what to do. But the guy that trained me, he trained me in about 30 seconds. He said, your job is talking to people. He said, if you talk a lot, you'll learn a lot. If you talk a little, you'll learn a little. I said, how much is a lot? He said, 10 a day. Of course, there's no internet or anything. So I had to go out and meet 10 people a day. And I said, okay, that's what I'll do. So I quit my job at the factory the next day, gave them a week's notice, went out, started talking to 10 a day, which I did for a year.
Okay.
At the end of that year, I had made one sale.
Wow.
And that was for a 5-gallon container of carpet shampoo to somebody that I knew that owned some apartment complexes and was the largest builder in Oklahoma City at the time. And I worked for him during the summer, kind of cleaning up around the construction site and all of that. And I was pretty handy with that stuff. So anyway, that was my only customer. So here I was, end of the year, standing at my window looking out. This was a pivotal moment. And I thought, what am I going to do? My home had been foreclosed. I had a notice on the door from the sheriff saying, you got to be out in 5 days. Both of my vehicles had been repoed. All of my furniture had been repoed, except for a few little sticks we had. I had a wife and a child. We had no food in the house. And I reached in my pocket, and all the money I had to my name was 15 cents. I had a nickel and a dime in my pocket. That was it.
Wow.
And I thought, what am I going to do? I thought, well, maybe I'll go back to the factory. And I thought about that for first 5 seconds. I don't even have a car to get there. The next 5 or 10 seconds, I'm going, nope, I'm not going back. And so I decided right then, I'm not going back. So I thought, what am I going to do for food? So I pick up a 5-gallon container of carpet shampoo, and I walk almost 3 miles in the Oklahoma heat to the place that the one customer that bought from me 6 months earlier. And I'm soaking wet when I get there. I walk in and set down the container, and he walks out of his office about that time. And he said, hey, Jim, he said, good to see you. And I said, hey, man, I brought you 5 gallons of carpet shampoo. I figured you're about out. And he said, yeah, we probably are. He told his assistant, cut Jim a check. I'm going, yeah, I got some money. I didn't know what I was going to do to, where I'm going to live in a few days. So
Wow.
he said, "Do you have a minute?" He said, "We'd like to talk to you, my brother and I." So I go into his office and he said, "How's your business going?" I said, "Great." He said, "We'd like to talk to you about maybe kind of partnering with us in an apartment complex." I'm going, "Man, it's going good, but I don't have the money to invest." And he said, "No, no, no, we're going to invest in you." Now, I was a pretty good carpenter because we built a home in the ninth grade in one of the classes. So I knew all of the trades. And I saved him a lot of money just cleaning up and helping him with different things that I'd done for him. He said, "We think you're pretty sharp and you're pretty honest and you're talented. And you kind of understand the construction business." He said, "We'd like to make you an offer." He said, "We want you to build a 52-unit apartment complex and run the whole deal. Build it from ground up." And he said, "We'll pay you." I said, "Well, how would that work?" And he said, "We'll pay you $300 a week." As soon as he said that, my mind is going, "I'm in."
Yeah, done.
He said, "We'll furnish you with a vehicle," which I didn't have anymore. "And if you want, you can have a 3-bedroom furnished apartment." The things that I did not have was given to me right then.
Wow.
And
That's
I took it
amazing.
on. Was it stressful? Yes. But here's the other thing. He said, "There's going to be a big bonus and a possible percentage of ownership for you." So the bonus was if I finished in 12 months, he said, normally it takes about 14 months for this particular type of project. If you finish in 12 months, there's a $60,000 bonus for you. But every day you go past that 12 months, you lose $1,000 a day. He said, but every day you finish prior to that 12 months, which is not likely, but if you do, it's another $1,000 a day in bonus.
Wow.
So I took it on, and when I went out there, there was 8 buildings, and he gave me a list of contractors. I'm going, there's 8 buildings here. Instead of using one cement contractor, I'm going to hire 8. Instead of using one framing contractor, I'm going to get 8. Instead of one roofer, I'm going to get 8. Sure. And long story short, I built it in 8 months.
Wow. So you started
completely finished.
All 8 buildings at the same time.
And I ended up with 15% ownership in the project, and future projects with them that we did following that, and building some warehouses and different things. So anyway, that business earned me about $500,000 that year.
Wow.
And the other miracle is that one of the executives from the direct sales company showed up during that 5-day period that I had to be out. Spent 2 hours with me, taught me what I was doing wrong and what I needed to be doing. Because I'd talked to 3,650 people that year and got a no from everybody except for the one guy. But he taught me a few things and turned me around so fast that business earned me almost $500,000 that year. So I went from 15 cents in my pocket to millionaire in 1 year. And
that's
how did
incredible.
that happen?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think if you're determined and you don't have an exit when you make a decision, if you don't plan your exit just in case, I think time, fate, and circumstances show up together and say, might as well let him have it. He's not going to stop.
So, I mean, if nothing else, that's an incredible reminder that for all of us that, I'm treating today just like a regular Thursday, and tomorrow will be Friday, and it's probably not going to be too incredible, right? You don't know, but that's amazing. I mean, just that things, miracles or however you want to label it, incredible events can happen so quickly, in your life. And so, you weren't expecting any of that when you did that 3-mile walk. You were trying to make one more sale, right?
I was desperate.
Yeah.
I was desperate for money, for food. And, I have to admit, I'd set the bucket down about every 50 yards because it was heavy. Sure. And a couple of times I just broke down, really. One time I'm just crying. I'm going, what am I doing? What if he doesn't buy? And I'm going, no, he's going to, and I pick up the bucket and go again.
Nice.
And
well, there probably, we could spend a whole episode on this particular event. I mean, it's in that year, but The other thing that I notice is that when you had showed your carpenter skills and your contracting skills and management skills and your honesty, you mentioned, um, along the way, not knowing where that would lead. So,
Yeah.
to the listener who may be, in a job they don't like as a carpenter or anything else, you never know where these skills that you're building now may lead you, right? And so it for you, it created an incredible opportunity that, I mean, my point is, if you hadn't worked hard and shown those skills before, you wouldn't have been presented that opportunity. You wouldn't have been able to do the construction in 8, was it 10 months, 12?
8 months.
All right, 8 months, eight buildings in 8 months. That's amazing. So
Yeah. It's,
yeah,
you look at it and you think, would the average person have gone out and got 3,650 people telling them no and continue? And when I look back at myself, I'm going, were you stupid or what? I mean, who would do that? But I just would not give up.
yeah,
But I look back, and that year was a great year for me. I mean, people
yeah,
ask me today, how do you handle rejection? I said, I don't know. I did that way back then. I don't have to do it anymore.
right,
I don't, somebody tells me no, I don't care. Just move on.
right. Yeah, it's an excellent training environment for sure. And
Yeah.
so walk us through after that. I mean, clearly the 1 year was awful, and then the next year things really turned around for you. So what happens after that?
Well, the direct sales company that I joined up in, the big benefit from that, the company went out of business a few years later, but the trainer in that company was Jim Rohn. You probably heard of Jim, and
Yeah.
I'm sure some of the listeners have, but
Yeah.
Jim was an unknown, but we became best of friends.
Okay.
And when that company went out of business, Jim and I got together and formed a business partnership, and I started promoting him. That's how I got in the business I'm in. And I did such a good job promoting him that it really forced me into speaking and getting up in front of audiences, and a lot of things that I was uncomfortable doing. But I learned to get comfortable at it quickly.
No, that's, I mean, yeah, he was, I just realized I've heard you on other podcasts, but, so, okay. So you started promoting him, you joined a business, you created a venture with him, right? And then how did that go from there?
Well, we were putting hundreds of thousands of people through events. I think I was the first person ever to sell a ticket to a seminar, the type as we know today, on personal development and real estate and various things. So I don't even know how I came up with it. I just started doing presentations, and it worked, and I started training other people. And before long, we had about 15 offices, and we had 20 salespeople in each office, all on straight commission selling tickets. So that was Tony Robbins was one of them that worked for me for about almost 5 years. So kind of helped to groom him a bit, and he looked up to Jim Rohn as his mentor, and I was more his coach, boss. I kind of would oversee all of the marketing. So
I see.
So we still stay in touch. So
no, that's fantastic. So and I do, before we get to kind of some of the canned questions, walk us through kind of how your business and things have looked for you in the last maybe 5 years or so. What do things look like more recently for you?
Well, of course, it's shifted a lot about 2.5 years ago when we had the whole COVID thing take place. But I switched pretty quickly online, and live are coming back now. But done a lot of other live things. I wrote 2 books during COVID too, published those. So
Nice.
those just came out. One called The Entrepreneur, Why 90% Fail and How to Avoid the Mistakes that they make. And the other one's called Directing the Movies of Your Subconscious Mind. So, wrote those 2 over that period of time, and did a lot of online events, started volunteering to be on podcasts. So you just keep your name out there, and now it's all coming back.
Yeah. Fantastic. So before we hit record, you mentioned to me, we were touching on how there are six elements that are central to, the mindset of becoming successful, if you will. And maybe you could probably say it in a better way, but let's talk about those.
Well,
what
I realized that I had these traits about 5 years ago, I guess. I took a camera crew around the country and I interviewed 12 mega millionaires. They all had to have started with nothing. They're all in different industries and they all had to be worth at least 200 million. And one was a billionaire. And after about the third interview, I thought, these people all have the same traits in common. They talk about the same things. In fact, one of them even said, yeah, there's 6 things that you need if you want, and that was the billionaire. And so I stopped. That was the third interview I did. And I stopped and going, do I have those things? And I look back at my life and I thought I do. Maybe not to the degree that I'm a billionaire, but I still have those. So the trait, they're simple things. Not always easy to apply, but simple.
Yeah.
Number one is if you want change in your life, if you want something better, if you want to earn more money, if you're an entrepreneur, the first thing you have to have is a desire to change. And that's got to be a burning desire, not just a passing thing that, well, one day I'm going to do this. I'm talking about that burning desire. And I had that in the factory. I had that in the gas station. I had that on the cotton fields. I wanted something more. And I wanted to be the best I could be at whatever I was doing. And I always felt I was the best cotton picker, the best gas station attendant, and the best factory. In fact, I was the best factory worker out of 9,000 people. They rated me. I did the job of 4.57 people. So you got to have desire.
Sure.
But, that's not enough because almost everybody has a desire for more. You could go out on any street corner and ask people, would you like to make more money? And you'd probably get a yes from most everybody.
Right.
But the next thing you've got to have is you got to make a decision. And so many people say, well, as soon as I figure out the opportunity to make $1 million, then I'll become a millionaire. I'll decide to be one. No, that's not the way it works. The way it works is you've got to put yourself in that place of being a millionaire or whatever it is you're looking for. I'm just using that as an example, but you've got to make a decision that doesn't allow for anything less than that. And if you look at, just take a whole circle, and we say that's a decision. But most people leave a little opening somewhere in that circle when they make a decision, and that's their escape route. They're actually, that's their excuse. That's why it didn't work. But you can't leave that opening. You've got to go for it. And even if something fails, and I spent $1 million on a television infomercial, and I knew in 3 hours one morning that it failed.
Wow.
Nothing I could do about it. So I just said, okay, let's move on. Got some good footage, use it someplace else or whatever. But $1 million footage, but it's still, it's done. It didn't work. So, but man, you've got to make that decision to move forward no matter what. And you hit obstacles, and you will. And you've got to take action based on that decision. So many people are getting ready to get going. As soon as I get this done, as soon as I get my business cards, as soon as I get this or that, they're ready to get going, but they're not going to go right now. But, overthinking and over planning things is it's disguised as, it's fear disguised as over planning.
That's really good.
You've got to move. And the sign of a good entrepreneur, and yes, maybe you have to plan some things out. Maybe you got to raise money. Maybe you got to do this or that. But what action can you take today that's going to move you toward what it is you want to accomplish? That's key. And when you take actions, you're going to hit obstacles. You're going to hit people that tell you no. It's just you're going to come face to face with these obstacles. And what I learned is that if you want to accomplish something more than what you already have, you've got to do something more than who you are. In other words, every life level, every business level, every income level requires a different you, requires a different mindset. You see, it's a different mindset to go buy a Chevy Vega versus a Lamborghini. Um, but a lot of people, let's say you save up all your money, you're going to go buy yourself a new Corvette. It's going to cost you $75,000. And you go down to the Chevy dealer and they said, we don't have any Corvettes. In fact, there's none available anywhere in the country. And you've been saving this money and you got it in cash, ready to buy this Corvette. And they said, but tell you what, we can make you a deal. I have 7 different cars in 7 different colors that I can sell you. So you have a different car each day of the week in a different color for the same price as you're paying for a Corvette. It's called a Chevy Vega or whatever they have. I don't know if that's even a Chevy or not. And my question is, would you say okay to that? Well, no, because you've saved hard-earned money to buy that Corvette, that car of your dreams.
Sure.
And you're not going to settle for those others.
Absolutely.
The question is, why do they make those others? That's for people that don't make decisions.
And don't
it's
take
people that just give what's
action.
handed to them.
Sure.
People that settle for what they have versus what they want. That's why they make those.
Okay.
So you've got to have a Corvette mindset or a Lamborghini mindset. I'm not talking about money is everything. It's not.
No, we're using this as
you've got to have
money, right? And I understand money does matter for sure, but we're just using this as one example. Could be weight loss or getting out of an abusive relationship, like you mentioned.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So number one is you've got to have a deep desire to change. Number 2 is you've got to make it a decision. It's not just a desire, because everybody's got some desire. You've got to make an actual decision that you're going to change. And number 3 is you're going to take action, right? So we're halfway there. What are the other 3?
Number 4 is being willing to feel uncomfortable. Being willing to step out of that comfort zone and become somebody different, become that different you that you're looking to become. Because if you want to be a millionaire, which is just a term, you've got to put yourself in that place, and that's uncomfortable for some people. In fact, it's uncomfortable for most people because they can't see themselves there. So you've got to be willing to step out of that comfort zone. Was it uncomfortable for me that year or that 8 months building that project? Absolutely. I don't know if I slept much during that time. I mean, it was hard, especially in the beginning. I guess I knew that you put the foundation in before you put the roof on, but I never built an apartment complex. I mean, my God. So
that was it reminds me, because I did jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu until the pandemic, really. But truth be told, I could go back. It's not an excuse, but no, one of my biggest takeaway in that sort of 3-year journey, if you will, was that you've got to be the best jiu-jitsu practitioners they get comfortable being uncomfortable, and in different positions, different maybe points, or we're in a match, just different situations, and if you're not willing to be uncomfortable, then you're just not going to do well in jiu-jitsu. So there's so many lessons that you can apply to life just from jiu-jitsu. But there's certainly, you don't want to go out too far and take too many risks and throw caution entirely to the wind, right? But you do have to push your boundaries and think differently. So far, all 4 of these have nothing to do with the outside world. It's all about your mindset and your internal belief structure. Okay, so you've got to be willing to get uncomfortable, out of your comfort zone. All right, I love it. What's number 5?
Number 5 is something I learned many years ago, and in fact, I was asked in front of a group one time years back. Somebody said, what's the number one thing that you've learned over the years that's been the most beneficial to you over and above everything else? And I said, learning to let go. Because we hang on to so much stuff. Now it's like the $1 million I spent on an infomercial.
Yeah.
That affected me for maybe a few hours, and then I decided it's done. I can't do anything about it. Let's move on, find something
I mean,
else.
that's no joke. It doesn't matter if you had $100 million at that point or $1.5 million to your name. $1 million
Yeah,
is a lot. It's a lot of money.
yeah,
I
a
mean,
lot of money to throw at something like
yeah,
that. But
sure.
but letting go comes. We spend so much of our time trying to control things over which we have no control.
So true.
That's stress and anxiety is really what that is. So if
Mm-hmm.
you learn to let go of the things over which you have no control, but learning to let go allows the decision that you've made and the actions you take, it allows everything to unfold. Because when you're so focused on, let's say, a problem, you're
Mm-hmm.
blinded by the solution. You don't see the solution. You see, when you make a decision to do a certain thing, the opportunities show up in your view. If you haven't decided to be a millionaire, the opportunity is not going to show up for you because you're not going to be looking for it. It's not going to be in your view.
Mm-hmm.
So letting go of obstacles, of things you can't control, of people you can't control, of things that didn't work out the right way. Let go and move on, man, because it leaves you wide open to accomplish what you want.
Sure. No.
I mean, I learned that. I look back and that trip 3 miles and then coming back home from that and telling my wife, we got $300 a week. We got a 3-bedroom apartment and we got a vehicle.
You got a vehicle, right?
I mean, and I got money in my pocket for some food. So all of that happened. And was it uncomfortable? Absolutely.
Sure.
But you got to be willing to let go of that stuff. And because it's not happening to you now. I had a woman in a workshop one time. She said, I can't be successful ever because of my father. And I said, well, what about your father? He said, well, he verbally abused me. And he always told me I'd never amount to anything, never measure up to my siblings, all of that. And she said, so I can never be successful. She said, that's wearing on me all the time. And I said, oh, well, where's your father now? She said, well, he died 10 years ago. I said, well, who's abusing you now? She said, I don't understand the question. I said, well, he's not here. Who's abusing you? She said, I still don't understand it. I said, well, you think about it for a while. The third time back, she said, you mean I'm abusing me? I said, what do you think? She said, I don't know. Fourth time back, I walked up in front of her and didn't say anything. She said, oh my God. She said, I'm keeping his legacy alive. She said, wow. I'm the one abusing me. I'm allowing what he did to me to continue through my life, and I might pass it on to my kids. And I said, well, you got a perfect opportunity here to cut the chain of pain and to move past that. And that's really the look on her face when she discovered that was just priceless. But that's what a lot of us do. We hang on to that stuff it's not happening to you now. Let's move on. And if it is happening to you now, there's always a way out.
And we may, I know I get outcome based, so if if your commercial had done well, then you would be happy, right? And if it didn't do well, then you're not. And there's a little bit of that you're never going to completely leave behind, but you don't have access to. Go ahead.
I was going to say the difference between happiness and pleasure.
Okay. What is it?
Well, happiness is inside. It's something that you carry with you all the time. We cover up our happiness with the things that make us unhappy, and we hang on to those. And once you start letting go of the things that make you unhappy, you'll be happy. But a successful infomercial or a new boat or a new car is not going to make you happy. That's pleasure. True. That's pleasure. Nothing wrong with it. It's pleasure.
Right.
No difference.
Yeah. Well, and it's very easy to beat yourself up too once you have access to the results. If something didn't go so well, right? But you made the right decision at that time with the information you had. So, okay. So what's number 6?
Okay, this is the best one of all. And if you really get this, you can pretty much have what you want in your life. So years back, it's probably been 30 some years ago, and a good friend of mine, he and I used to read the same books, and then we would get on the phone and discuss them.
Mm-hmm.
And we had just got through reading he said, read chapter 80 or page 89 or something. I read it, and then we got on the phone to discuss it. At the end of our conversation, he said, Jim, what do you think the word resourceful means? And I said, never thought about it, man. I said, I guess maybe using your imagination or being more productive. I said, I don't know. Why? He said, oh, it's just an interesting word. I said, okay, I guess so. And we hung up. Later, I left my office driving home, and I couldn't quit thinking about the word. It was like somebody saying, don't think about a pink elephant, and all you can think about is a pink elephant,
Mm-hmm.
So I get home, and of course, we didn't have internet back then. So I go in the house. First thing I do is go to the dictionary, open up my big, thick dictionary, and I look up the word resourceful. And it was defined as, once again, full of source, resourceful. I thought, that's interesting, depending on what you think source is. So I thought, I'm going to look up source. So I looked up that word, and it was defined as where all things originate. Not some things, but all things. And I thought, wow, that's pretty powerful too, depending on what you think source is. And I continued for about a year and a half. Every time I'd go into a bookstore or library, I'd look up, try to find origin of words, for another definition of source. And I was obsessed with it.
A little obsessed.
Yeah. And so I was in England, in a small town, Chester, and I was walking down the street one day waiting for my event to take place. And I see this sign on the back door of a building. It said antique books. And I thought, oh, I love old books. So I walk in the back door. Here's a dictionary about this thick and all tattered and torn. And it said, do not open. And I thought that meant for the people in the UK, not for me. So I decided I'm going to open this. But I was prepared to buy it, I think. I don't know what the price was. But I opened to the sources to the S's very carefully. And I looked up the word source. Saw some of the same things I'd seen before, but one definition popped out at me. It said, source, love. I went, wow, once again, full of love. I thought, how does that relate to our lives? And I stood there and I put this whole event together in my mind, standing there in front of this book. And I thought, well, when you decide something, when you decide you're going to accomplish something, you're going to write your own book, you're going to do a certain thing, you're going to accomplish something in your life, you fall in love with it. That's what creates the passion to continue to move forward. And I thought, that's it. We set a goal, we decide we're going to do something, we fall in love with it. Then I thought, well, wait a minute. There's a flaw in that. If all things originate in love, where does fear come from? Because you hear people say that the two emotions you're going to experience in life is love and fear. So where does fear come from? And I thought about that for a moment, because I thought it was a flaw in my thinking or in the definition. And I thought, oh, I get it. We fall in love with fear. We create it ourselves. And we have a passion for keeping it alive. And that's how we live our lives, in fear. And so the question is, are you honoring that fear? Or are you honoring what you love in your life? And it's a choice, no judgment. You can live in fear if you want to, because it's all fear is created in your mind. People
no matter what you're going to be loving something. Right.
Yeah.
And so whether
and somebody challenged me once on that, and they said, well, if all fear is in your imagination, how about if a bear or a lion is chasing you through the woods? Isn't that real fear? I said, nope, it's made up. You're making up in your mind what's going to happen if that bear catches you. So it's still in your imagination. Now, I might run too, but still we're making up what's going to happen. I mean, a bear may lick you, who knows? You won't know until he catches you, but
so would you
still
say
we
that,
make it up.
But
we're making up, what's going to happen if I make that next sales call? What if they tell me no? What's
Right.
going to happen if I see this woman and I want to ask her out on a date and
Yeah.
I'm afraid she's going to say no, or some
Right.
guy that,
Right. Well,
all
what
made
comes to
up.
mind, yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
well, the saying of it's substituting even if instead of what if. So instead of walking around saying, what if this happens? What if this happens? What if this happens? No, you say, even
Mm-hmm.
if she says no, even if I
Yeah.
don't get the job, it's okay. I'm
Yeah.
going to be okay.
Just move forward with what you want to do. And,
Sure. So would you say there's no place for fear at all?
um, well, I'd say there's probably a healthy place
Mm-hmm.
for some fears. I
Sure.
mean, you don't want to put your hand in a flame or something, or
Yeah. Gotcha. No, that's really interesting. I'd never heard that explained like that. The resourceful to source, um, to love, source equals love. And then love is what creates that passion, which really kind of starts the process all over again. If you think of it that way, for
Mhm.
steps 1 through 6, right? So,
Yeah, and I was in Toronto about after I discovered this about probably a year later, and a friend and I we were presenting a seminar there, and we had taken a walk, and we're out maybe 2 or 3 miles, and he looked at his watch and he said, "Man, we got to get back." He said, "We're going to cut it close." And I said, "Well, good things they can't start without us because we're the event." But so
right.
we were hoofing it pretty good. I'm 6'4", so I was walking pretty big steps, and he was a tall guy too. And and suddenly I felt this presence right here over my shoulder, and actually I could smell the guy, uh, and he was in step with me, and was just right here. I mean, just and he kept mumbling some things, and I didn't, and I was just getting ready to turn around and say, "Hey, buddy, would you back off a little bit?"
Sure.
And but just before I turned around, he said, "And God created man." And that was his voice. And then another voice, which came from him as well, but a
Mm-hmm.
different voice. He said,
Mm-hmm.
"Well, I know that." He said, "Yeah, but then God created woman." He said, "Well, I know that too." He was having a conversation with himself, and he says,
Uh-huh.
"But then God created fruit." He said, the other voice said, "Fruit? What does that have to do with anything?" He said, "Well, inside the fruit, there's a seed." And he said, "If you
Mm-hmm.
plant it, it will grow.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't, it won't." So, and then he turned and went the other direction.
Okay.
I told my friend, I said, "I'm going to go follow him, see what the rest of this seminar is."
Right.
I didn't, but the point is, your dreams and goals and things that you want
Mm-hmm.
to accomplish,
Mm-hmm.
they're like that seed.
Mm-hmm.
Your mind creates the seed, and you have to
Mm-hmm.
plant it in a
Mm-hmm.
decision to get it to grow. Then you got to
Got it.
nurture it to keep the weeds out, just like in your garden. You got to keep the weeds away.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to take the negativity that doesn't support what it is you want. Got to make
Mm-hmm.
sure the actions you're taking are moving you in the direction you want to go, not away
Mm-hmm.
from it.
I love it.
And
That's
and
awesome.
that's a level of self-observation. One level above self-awareness is self-observation, watching yourself do things instead of just being aware that you've got a problem and looking out for a solution, but being more observant of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
When you do something that it's like my brother-in-law once called me, and he was ranting, and I said, "Patrick, what's wrong?" He said, "I'm late for an appointment. I'm in Los Angeles. I'm stuck in traffic. It's moving like at a walking pace." And he said, "I
Mm-hmm.
got to be there on time." And I said, "Patrick," I says, "lighten up a little bit." And he said, "No, man." He said, "I got to get there." And I said, "Where are you right now?"
Mm-hmm.
He said, "I'm in the damn traffic." And I said, "Sounds like you're part of the problem." And he paused for a minute. He goes, "God, I never thought about that." I said, so, we got
Yeah,
to
because
lighten up.
yeah,
And it turns out the traffic took off, and he made his appointment on time. But
I love it. So are there things that you do, I mean, to kind of help yourself be more observant of yourself, or how do we implement that on a kind of
uh,
day-to-day basis?
I'd say day to day, moment to moment. It's how you develop the habits that you have right now was developed over a lifetime. And to redevelop those habits, different habits, it's letting go of some of the old habits and just making sure that you're moving in the direction you want to go and observing yourself if you're not, and making choices that take you where you want to go or feed the life that you want to live. And that becomes a habit. And I can say that it has become a habit for me. It's hard to get me upset. It's hard to bother me. If something doesn't work, it's like, oh, well, let's move on. And
I love it.
So
yeah, I imagine you sleep pretty well at night too.
I do. I sleep pretty well.
So I do have some rapid fire questions as we start to wrap up here. What's one thing that people misunderstand about you, Jim?
Probably, I don't think they understand how simple I am. I mean, I talk about sometimes some complex things, but I live a life pretty simple. And I mean, I've got nice things and nice homes and stuff, but yet, I don't live a life around my business. I live a life. My business is my business, and I live another life. I like to go fishing and do normal things that people do.
Gotcha. That's good. What's one of your biggest failures or regrets? Anything that you'd like to do over?
Like to do over? Wow. I'd say, I've been married. This is my second time. We've been married 40 years coming up in August. My first marriage, I had 2 children, and probably if I had it to do over, I would have spent more time with them.
Gotcha.
But they lived with their mom, and I saw them, on weekends and things like that. But I think that may be something I would love to have been able to do.
Got it. If you were given $10 million tomorrow, I'm not saying you don't have $10 million, but if somebody wrote you a check for $10 million for anything, no strings attached, what would you do with it?
Wow. I might give, half of that to charity, to stop child trafficking. That would be one thing. I'm not sure. I mean, I have pretty much everything I want, so I don't know.
Sure.
Maybe I'd give it all to charity.
Yeah, there you go. It's a good answer. As far as your business today, I know we touched on it already. What's one challenge that you're facing in your professional life or your business right now?
I don't feel like I have challenges, but I think probably maybe I do. Maybe the biggest thing would be the understanding or the willingness to understand technology and where it's all going.
Sure.
I so love the 80s when we didn't have cell phones or computers or all that. We had real appointments and but I don't know. I mean, that's probably my biggest challenge is technology.
Gotcha. What is a book or two, and it can be one of yours, a book or two that you'd recommend for my audience, the entrepreneur out there?
If you want to read the best book you'll ever read, most likely, if not, it'll be in your top 5. It's my book called Rings of Truth, which is my story, written in 1997. Nice. When I put it out, started selling it on the internet when the internet was just in its beginnings. I sold tens of thousands of copies, and my guarantee was, if this is not either your number 1 book you've ever read or at least in your top 5, you paid $25 for it, I'll refund you $50 and you keep the book.
That's
and I never got a refund. But I got thousands and thousands of letters through the mail, notes and postcards and stuff about what they got out of the book. So it's a pretty awesome book.
That's great. I'm gonna have to check it out. I heard of it before. Now that I'm looking at it, I definitely need to read that one.
I'll send you a copy.
Perfect. Let's see. What about, I guess, other podcasts, or where do you get your kind of your information? Social media, news, podcasts? Is there anyone else that you, any source, if you will, that you follow every day, kind of thing, for business or
No,
for life?
no, I've never really thought of that. I've had a mentor.
Uh-huh.
Probably been a lot of people that didn't look at him as mentors, just like Jim Rohn.
Hmm.
Probably were both mentors to each other in a sense. But
Hmm.
looking back, he probably was a mentor because I learned
Sure.
a lot from being around him and his
Yeah.
style and all of that. Um, but
I've always liked that approach myself, where it's less formal and it's,
yeah,
it's a little more organic as far as just learning from each other instead of,
well,
hi, will you be my mentor?
yeah, and I'm a thinker. I
Uh-huh.
contemplate. I
Yeah,
create my stuff,
I
and
can tell that.
I do have one mentor and one source, and I guess ideas
Yeah,
come to me, and I take those and try to make them bigger and formulate them
sure.
to where people can utilize them. But
Well,
I've never been
yeah.
a seminar goer. I'm not a I
Mhm.
don't listen to audios or any of that. I don't watch. I've never watched a podcast, not even my own.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, because you mentioned having the one idea when you were by the pool many years ago, right? And the thing I
Yeah.
thought of was you were by the pool. I mean, and meaning you created space to have that reflection and that idea to move, to propel your to then do the 6 steps, I guess, right? But
Yeah.
to take action. But I think in today's environment, today's world, we're not intentional about creating that mental space to even process what's going on. So many of us are just so busy, and just so we're missing out on. There's a big opportunity cost there, and that's one thing I've taken among many from your story, is that you seem to create space and allow yourself to reflect. And I would imagine that had a lot to do with you coming up with all these successful ideas and being able to implement things. What would you say to that?
I'd say it's absolutely true. I mean, yesterday I decided to go fishing, and took one of my sons and went fishing. But when I get home, my cell phone had all kinds of text on it. My computer had all kinds of emails, and some
Mhm.
people go, I had 2 or 3 that goes, "Where are you? How come you're not getting back with me?" I'm going. So when I did get back, I said, "I went fishing."
Yeah, that's kind of
You
the
know,
point, right?
you can't think of business when you're fishing. I'm out there in a kayak. We're kayak fishing, and you
Right.
can't think about business out there on a lake like that. It's
Sure.
so it opens you up, and
Yeah.
the flow of ideas. And I don't book my calendar for appointments out past 10 days.
Hmm.
I mean, for an event like coming on your podcast or event, I'll
Sure.
put it on my calendar, but
Sure.
not
Not the day-to-day kind of.
yeah.
Got it. That's really good. Sounds like you've reached a very kind of, have a lot of freedom mentally and with your day-to-day schedule. So that's awesome. What's one thing that we haven't touched on that you'd like to touch on? Anything you want to cover?
Well, not really, but the self-observation thing. I just want to kind of
Yeah.
restate that because uh, think of it in terms of you pull up to a red light and it'll have a sign that says right turn on red after stop.
Mm-hmm.
The question I would have for people is, would you dare drive through that and not stop before you check both directions? Just pull up to red light, you're just going through it. And most people will say, well, no. Well, why
Right.
not? You might have an
Yeah.
accident. Well, you
Right.
might
Sure.
not. You might just go on through it. Nobody's going to hit you. You might do it 5 times, but
Mm-hmm.
eventually somebody's going to hit you.
Sure.
And if you look at your life that way, we feel that stop. We feel that inside, like, what should I do here? Well, the big question is, if you're right turn on red after stop and you look both directions and ask yourself, if I go this direction, what's going to happen? If I go this direction, what's going to happen? And then choose the one that's going to take you where you want to go, instead of going in the one that you shouldn't be taking. Because if you do, you'll end up in an accident or end up not getting what you want in life. And so many people choose the wrong direction. They honor the wrong thing. Honor yourself. my kids said the other day, they said, who do you think is, or one of my kids, he said, who do you think is the most important person on this planet? And I said, I am. And I said, to me, I'm the most important person. And to you, you should be the most important person. Because if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of others.
Yeah. And it also, you mentioned letting go of the things you can't control. Well, you really can't control anybody else.
No,
right?
definitely not.
So
You'd like to sometimes, but you can't.
sure. Absolutely. No, that's really good. That's fantastic. So, well, Jim Britt, where can people reach out to you? Where can we find you online?
Well, if you go to jimbritt.com, that's with 2 T's, Britt, jimbritt.com. If you want a great program that will help you to reprogram your subconscious regarding your relationship with money, which most people have a bad one, go to crackingtherichcode.com. You can reach me there. And if you'd like to become a co-author in one of our books, that we're in our 11th volume of, we already have 10 #1 international bestsellers. If you'd like to be considered as a co-author in there, if you're a coach, speaker, author, entrepreneur, go to becomeacoauthor.com and you'll see an overview of that and a little thing you can fill out and set an appointment with me, and we can discuss whether or not you're a fit for the book series. But it's a great, it's endorsed by Tony Robbins. Kevin Harrington from the TV show Shark Tank is involved with it with me. Your picture's on the cover of the book along with mine, Tony and Kevin. So it's pretty cool what we put together.
It's really cool.
Plus it has a monthly mastermind that goes along with it that we work with our co-authors.
Nice. That's awesome. Well, that's fantastic, Jim. We've covered a lot of ground. We not going to rehash everything, but we went through your upbringing that was, didn't come from much, financially, not too many resources growing up. And then just the 2-year span there where, you didn't really, I think you sold, made 2 sales, right? In the 12 months, something like that. And then
only one.
Yeah. Only one. You did the second one, right?
Yeah. Well, I did make the second. You're right. I did. Make
But then the dramatic turnaround I mean, this is really good stuff. There's so much I could regurgitate here, but the 6 steps of desire, then number 2, decision, number 3, take action, number 4, being willing to feel uncomfortable, number 5, letting go of things you can't control, and number 6 is be resourceful, which is really about finding the source, which is love, right? So and be careful about what you focus on or what you do love, I guess. Be intentional about that. So, man, this has been awesome. Jim Britt, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time today. So thank you so much.
My pleasure, Jamie. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And to the listener out there, we thank you very much for spending your most valuable resource with us, and that is your time. Thanks, everyone. Take care.